So hello, we're doing this in English, so I hope that's fine. Well, it's fine with you. So for our post-lunch wake-up call, we have only half an hour to discuss gender equality, a very complex, very multidimensional issue, and we have such distinguished panelists that are here with me, and I'm going to tell you who they are. Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Australia for Greece, Alison Duncan. Zefi, the Madame, the General Secretary for Equality and Human Rights from the Greek government. Stella Kasdagli, on the screen, author and founder of Women on Top, one of the most well-known NGOs in the field of women's rights. Despina Limniotaki, back over there. Council person, is that correct? Councillor for Public Health and Municipal Health Centers for the Municipality of Athens, and Zenik Sakoustou, Marketing and Sustainability for Henkel in Greece. So great to have you here. I'm the least experienced person with regards to gender equality and women's rights, but I want to just set the stage for this discussion, and I'll be extremely brief in noticing two key things. First of all, and all of this we've discussed a little bit in our bilateral discussions that we've had, gender equality is an issue that's been at the forefront of public dialogue, social dialogue, and so many things that we've heard in terms of policy reforms, top priority for if we talk about OECD countries, EU, Greece. And yet, at the same time, despite all these promises, the situation on the ground, as we all experience it because we're all women, but also as we see in the data, and we are data people, is really staggering, is really disheartening. And I have a lot of data here that I'll perhaps feed the discussion with. So this is a paradox that we see here. There's a lot of political goodwill, there's a lot of promise, and yet the situation is really lagging behind. Secondly, and obviously related to that, there's a bit of a chicken and egg catch-22 situation between policy reform, whether it's implemented or not, policy, implementation, and culture, right? The situation, social stereotypes, and all of this is so interrelated, and it must be such a challenging situation for any person. And we have three people here working on policy, at least one trying to influence policy and comment on policy. And this has to be such a challenge. And I want to start with you, Mrs. Di Madama, please. With regards to Greece, we have a situation whereby Greece is in a position that's very difficult in Europe, and nobody can judge the fact that it's a priority and that there's political goodwill and there's really hope for reform, and yet the numbers are disheartening for Greece. And we know, because we all live here, that at least in Greece the problem is very much systemic, very much horizontal in terms of the social, stereotypes and social culture that we experience. We live in we have to say, the patriarchal society in its essence. How do you try to deal with it? What are the priorities? How can you combine the reforms that have to be implemented with regards to the European platform and the directives? We have so many that are relatively recent. We have the national strategy. How do you balance the two?
Thank you so much for the invitation in this excellent panel. And I'd like to say that it's something not easy to work in the field of human rights and gender equality issues. And the women's rights is human rights. So just to clarify, because sometimes, we hear some people say that, okay, the women's rights, but okay, it's human rights. So the first step that we have already done in our governance, because in the Greek government, last year's, it's first priority, the agenda of human rights and gender equality issue. And we have the equality of marriage, that this is something that it's really very interesting and very, I can say, not easy to go on with this, but it was something that If we are a European country, if we want to say that we have democracy and equal rights, we have to do that. The first one is this. The other issue is that we try to have this balance between the professional and the family life. And this is something that in the numbers of the IEG, the European Institute for Gender Equality, we have a small positive step. And this is not something that it's happening like that, because, okay, we started working in this field, but we need time, we need, to build step by step the whole procedure. With the policies, the law, as you know, the law is a very good law in the European level, and the legislative procedure and the institutional protection, but we need to implement all this issue. We need to have audit if we have these equal rights in the family, because when we close the door, we say, okay, this is something private here. I don't care what you say about that, Mr. Madama. And the violence against women in the house, the domestic violence, it's a huge issue, and we work a lot in this field, and we have many, many years working in this issue. We have the issue of violence and the balance in the labor market, that this is another issue. Yes, the harassment, but the pay gap, what's happening with the pay gap? And now we promote a law about that, how we will have limited, I hope delete, but limited this pay gap. We are more or less in the same level with the European Union. It's about 15% that women pay less than the men for the same job, and we're about 14. It's okay. And also we need to have the opportunities, most women, to be at the high-level position. The first thing is that sometimes, sorry to say, and this is not bad thing, we try to find people to work in the labor market. We say we have refugees, migrants, yes, okay, but we have women. Only the 52% of the Greek women in Greece, that they are now in the labor market. All the other is out, and they have a very good education, professional in the university, and I know that my students, women and men, but women are most, finalizing their universities, want to do master degrees, and we need to support them. I think I have a few minutes just. Okay, so I stop here, and maybe I will have a second round. Thank you.
We have questions on this, but we'll try to keep this alive and kicking, right, in terms of, Madam Ambassador, to you. With regards to the Australian example, two things that I noticed, and I mentioned them to you earlier yesterday during our call, and because there are things that we rarely see in terms of policy, narrative and government narrative in Greece. Number one, the government has been extremely self-critical in terms of addressing, explaining what the problem is and saying what needs to be done. So instead of saying, yes, we do fantastic things and we've done so much, what I've read was shocking as a Greek. And yet you have done a lot of progress. There's a lot to be done, but your progress has been noted and is in the data. Secondly, and maybe this is something that could provide a lesson learned that's tangible for Greece. In terms of policy reform, it all goes through the PM's office, the Prime Minister's office. So it's horizontal, and it stems throughout the policy legislation of all ministries. Can you, comment on these and anything else that could be tangible lessons learned for us here?
Sure, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here. And, the first thing I will say is that Australia has the same problems as Greece, and we don't have all the answers. But one thing we do realise is that taking good examples from other countries is a really good way to try and improve your performance. And I think that's one of the reasons Australia has been really honest about our failings, because if you don't admit there's a problem, you're never going to be able to fix it. So I think we have taken that step of being quite honest about where the failings are in Australia, and they're in all the same areas. It's true that for many years now, the Office of Women in Australia has sat within the Prime Minister's department, and that's very intentional because it's a way of forcing all of government to pay attention. So if there is a policy designed to lift the status of women, that office has responsibility for pursuing it and for making sure that the entire civil service does so, which is a good way of trying to get everyone mobilised. A couple of other things that I'll mention that might be of interest. We also have a gender pay gap. It's about 13%, so not too different to Greece's. One of the things, we have a workplace gender equality agency in Australia, and as of this year, that agency it's mandatory for any organisation with more than 100 employees to report their gender pay gap to that agency, and those numbers will be published. Now, in the past, that agency has worked with organisations to try and help reduce their gender pay gap, and that has worked to a certain extent. But now there's a much bigger incentive for organisations to get their act together because their numbers will be published. And what that means is that women who are looking for a career can have a look at what their gender pay gap is and say either, oh, that looks good, or no, I don't want to work for them. And likewise, you know, it can give investors incentives and so on. So it's a good incentive to help move things along. Another area that we're really looking hard at is the care economy. That will be very familiar to people in this room. We know that women undertake the largest proportion of unpaid care. Some of the things that our government is doing to try and address that is increase the amount of paid parental leave available to both women and men, and to encourage men to take parental leave. That is something that's becoming, you know, we talked about both policy and society. That is something that's becoming more acceptable in Australia. I won't say that all men take parental leave, but a lot more men are now. And it's becoming more a part of our society, and the younger generation is much more likely for men to take an equal, or perhaps not quite the same, but some amount of parental leave to allow their female partners to go back to work and to have some time with their children. The other thing we're looking at is the care economy that's paid, but as we know in Australia, and I think in Greece too, those jobs are among some of the lowest valued in society. They're very important, but they're poorly paid, and women are more likely to work in those roles. A lot of those roles are roles where they're paid for by government or government subsidies. So the government is also increasing salaries this year. We're increasing the wages for people working in aged care by 15%, because it's a recognition that those industries are really important to society. Women are working in them and they're being paid poorly. Just a couple of other things, because we need to move on. But in terms of women in leadership positions, unlike some countries, we don't have quotas in Australia. That has worked for a lot of countries. We don't have them. What we tend to have is targets. So 45% of our members of the Commonwealth Parliament, so the national parliament, are women. So that's not bad. And that's generally come about because of targets within political parties, but also, and I'm happy to talk about it more later if we get a chance, because of grassroots. It's because of people getting angry with old men only ever being elected to Parliament, and they've decided not to do that anymore. But we can talk more about that if you'd like later. In terms of government departments and government organisations, there are generally quotas. So it's usually 40-40-20 in Australia, so we expect 40% female, 40% male, and 20% either, you know, at any level in government, and a lot of private sector have similar quotas, similar targets, and that's worked reasonably well for us. And the last one I'll touch on, because it's so relevant both here and in Australia, is gender-based violence. We're spending a lot of money and we're doing a lot of work to try and combat this, but it's still a huge issue in Australia. And we certainly haven't solved it. But one of the recent policy initiatives is to force all employers, private and public sector, to provide up to 10 days of family and domestic violence leave every year to their employees. It's a small thing that can be done, but it does tend to be helpful to people who are suffering the effects of domestic and family violence. There's many other things that we could talk about, but I think my time's up.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I do want to come back to a lot of the things that you mentioned, but before we do that, and I want to, fire back at you with them. I wanna ask Stella two questions, Stella, for you, please. One would be your comment, and because I know, this is somewhat of, the useful things and the interesting things that we discussed yesterday, I want you to share them with the room regarding the policy versus culture dilemma, if there is such a thing, and if we can name it as such. And the second is the following. I was looking into recent data with regards to what Greeks think about this issue, right? And we have, for example, the recent Dianeosis report, and the data that we have there is so encouraging. So 9 out of 10 people overall think that men and women should share the household and child related labor, but active care at home equally. 9 out of 10 in Greece. And then 9 out of 10 also think that women should be encouraged and supported into working more, because we do have one of the lowest. I mean, we're okay with a wage gap, but in terms of labor participation, we're really, really low with regards to EU and OECD. So, how does that combine? I mean, what they say in terms of their opinion, I mean, I know it's just a report, with regards to, what we experience, what you experience, you talk to hundreds of women.
Yeah, of course. Afternoon from Australia. I'm really sorry I can't be there with you today. We're here because of research that we're conducting to better understand women in the region of Greece. So I will start from the fourth point with domain. I will share 2 examples from surveys that we've and in every survey, we tend to ask people what they believe, but I think equally even more useful to look into what they do. So one thing from our paternity leave and parental leave. And
Stella, hold on just one sec, just in case. Can we fix the sound a little bit or not?
If my headphones on, better?
We can hear you, so-and-so.
Maybe you can go Présvειρα and put my headphones and try again.
I don't know, I need advice. I have no idea what to do. Okay. So there's nothing we can do. Okay, so then continue, it's okay. Just speak slowly if you can. No.
Okay.
Thanks.
So in our recent survey about paternity leave, parental leave, Greece, 50% fathers with children younger than 12 answered that they have not taken one day paternity leave in their lives. 50%. The other piece of to share is a 20 percentage point difference between what men do in their household in terms of finance. So shopping, their tax returns, who manages the household. The reason I'm
Stella, wait just a sec. We're still trying to solve it. Yes. You'll have to share these things again. So you'll try to call her. Is that it? Okay. We'll try to call you, Stella. Okay, so that you can be heard through the phone.
Okay.
Thanks. So maybe you probably mute the computer. I'm sorry, we'll make you repeat almost everything that you said. And then we'll have 10 minutes. God. Stella, we'll come back to you so that we don't lose any more time, okay? We'll come back to you with that. So hold on to those thoughts. Mrs. Lignotaki, can I come to you? Local municipality, community building, and everything that you see, and as a liberal person, that you try to make in terms of, you know, the changes that you try to make on the local level. What role does local municipality have to play here? And also in terms of, I mean, the cultural change. And you can also mention prevention also with regards to gender-based violence, because I know it's a priority for the government, but if we don't work on prevention, then, you know, little can be done. And we do see, again, very disheartening data with regards to femicides. So, yes, please.
Thank you for the question. First of all, let me tell you how honored I am to be among like-minded women who really make equality a reality. And also, I'm very happy to be near the ambassador of Australia, because actually I have been studying what's going on in Australia, because it's the queen of prevention policies right now. I am a subscriber to all your national campaigns. I mean, learning from you. And I just said this morning in another meeting that we don't have to think very hard in Greece as far as what we are about to do and how we can go about making policies. We have to learn from good practices from abroad, maybe bring people who can teach us how to do it. But most of all, what we hadn't realized before, because I believe that Greece as a country is very behind as far as prevention policies is concerned. What we haven't realized is the role the municipalities can play in enforcing, in encouraging prevention policies, because it's actually about creating a grassroots culture. It's not about me telling you what to do. It's about building, co-building, and co-creating. So what we're trying to do in the municipality of Athens right now is really listen to people's needs in the communities. I'm very happy to be working with 7 vibrant communities in the municipal clinics. And as far as health is concerned, because I'm involved in health care and mental health care, let me tell you that we are very behind as far as gender equality is concerned. Not many women have access to health benefits or services or information. We have to reach out to them. We cannot just say, oh, we are here. If you need anything, you can always ask, because there are plenty of vulnerable groups who will never come and speak to you because they're afraid, they're ashamed, they are bullied by their partners. They are in a lot of different situations and they cannot come to us. So we are reaching out to communities right now. But let's keep the message, the core message, which is try to cooperate and also learn from what's happening in other countries. For example, as far as gender violence prevention is concerned, I mean, Australia really shows the way. And I hope that in the very near future, we will be able to have panels of people who are going to go a step further and actually suggest what we should do, not just theoretically talk about it.
Thank you. Stella, I think we can come back to you.
Oh, great. You don't have to repeat the questions. I remember those.
Thank you, Stella.
Can you hear me well now?
Yes, much, much better.
Great. Great. So, the gap between policy and society is interconnected with the gap you mentioned between what people believe and what they do. And I want to share 2 pieces of data from recent surveys that Women on Top has conducted. One is from our research on paternity and parental leaves. So 50% of fathers with children younger than 12 in Greece have not taken up one day paternity leave during their children's lives. 50%, half of them, one day. The second piece of evidence comes from our joint research with Athenea about the financial literacy of men and women in Greece. So there we see a very wide percentage point gap in terms of who makes decisions in the households regarding consumption, regarding who does the tax refund paperwork in the house. So men seem to be much more involved and much more confident in handling the household finances. So it's one matter what we believe, another matter what we do, and it's one matter what the policy says, what the law says, and what the society believes and is able to implement. So Greece is amongst the 12 countries in the world that have reached 100% legal equality between men and women. As you mentioned previously, Mirto, this is not the reality we live in and that we observe around us, and this is not the reality that the European Gender Equality Index shows for Greece. So why the gap? First of all, we have a policy that needs to be implemented by people. And if people do not believe that this policy is right, or if people do not believe that this policy is effective or it's possible to be implemented by them, then we will have a huge gap between policy and implementation. But it also goes the opposite way, because you cannot depend on changing everyone's minds within a society in a sustainable time frame, because we cannot live with so many femicides every year. We cannot live with this employment gap that you mentioned, given our demographic, the very serious demographic issues that we have to deal with in this country. So we can't wait for everyone to change their minds within society. So we need some kind of framework, a framework that policy can offer, policy can provide, that says, I don't really care what you believe right now within the public sphere and within the private sphere as far as it impacts the public one. You have to do 1, 2, 3. And I think the interconnection of these two fields, what society believes, what it does, and what policy says, is so closely interconnected that we cannot separate one from the other. Let's take the schools. Very often we talk about education as the real solution of changing the biases and the stereotypes and prejudice in society as a whole. But who does the education work in schools? It's the adults who do this kind of work most of the time. So what can we do about what adults believe and what adults can teach the children to believe as they grow older? So I think we really need to focus on this interplay. We really need to focus on lifelong education, on matters of social change and social cohesion and social justice. This is not just for children, it's for everyone who works, lives, grows, decides, pays in the society. And we also need to pay attention to policy and how it is implemented. Because sometimes policy and law is more progressive than the whole of society is. And we need this example in order to have something concrete to follow.
Thank you, Stella. Yes, yes. Thank you, Stella. Over to you, Ms. Xakustou. And you work in a multinational company, which is of German origin. It's huge all over the world and has offices here. Yes. And you have very not strict, very ambitious goals with regards to gender equality. And you work in Greece, so you come with the German mentality to bring it and implement it here. And you do have also experience from Greek companies as well. So can you comment a little bit about, the policy versus culture issue within companies?
This is a great question, because it's two things, discussing about culture overall, and then just trying to bring it down to the management level and to the employees level. Because maybe the multinational or the Greek company, because we have seen steps that are happening steps between the years, not only on the multinational level, but also on local level from Greek companies that are quite serious, let's say, and they are starting to discussing about equality and gender parity. And this is very important for us, that we are women. First of all, we're moms, and we are working moms. And this is overall a problem for all of the working moms, because as a role model, we have many difficulties, many responsibilities. We do not go alone anywhere. We have a family behind, so we need support. And this support maybe is kind of dangerous for the company, because everyone thinks that, okay, she has her children, her husband, the household, so she cannot do it. She cannot be a manager in parallel. So actually this is not true at all, because I think that all the managers that are women with families, especially with younger children, have proved that they're multitasking and they can do anything. But okay, let's go back to the initial question, which is what's happening to the cultural level. Yes, the companies have a little bit woken up and they do want to change. They understand, but when the company employs certain personalities who have grown up with certain culture, it cannot be done from one day to another. Yes, the younger managers may be a kind of different than the older ones, but I think that's not only about the age, it's about the personality, and this is very difficult to change. So what we have to understand here is that the role of a woman being on the corporate part, it's pretty much hard, and of course we need support, and from the company, from the family, and of course from the local level and the laws and everything. But I do not want to live here and not say that we're kind of problematic because we are women. It's the opposite. We can do it, we can be together, and we should mention here that we can be together from women to women, because actually sometimes the problem is not only on men, but it's only from women, it's of course from women to women. The competitiveness is something pretty much different, but it's another topic, it's very wide. We need more time for this, but let's keep this one.
This is actually the last question. I wanted to just steal a couple of minutes now that Thanos is involved somewhere else and doesn't pay attention. one minute, okay? Because I wanted a comment. We had this discussion yesterday over the phone, and I think we've all experienced how competition, among women, having women in positions is not enough sometimes. And we see it in women in leadership, and we see it with women among ourselves and the competition that we have. And they are the worst anti-feminists sometimes. Does anybody care to comment about this? And, I don't know, just free question for anybody. I mean, I know that you said it first, Jenny, but anybody that wishes to comment on this? And then we'll close. Stella? Please.
I think Stella's trying to speak.
Sorry, yeah. We recently held a workshop in Thessaloniki about this very issue, and I was so glad to hear so many women, there were about 80 women in there, talking about the matter of women's competition or conflict, or however you want to call it, in such a nuanced way. We had women talking about the difficulties that women had to face as they were climbing up a ladder or while they were trying to survive, and talking about this survivorship bias that makes us be the harshest critics of other women because they haven't had such a hard time as we had. They talked about how how few resources we have to fight upon between ourselves. And then they talked about cases where this story about women's competition is such a stereotype. we tend to conflate the degree that women get in conflict with one another, as if nobody else gets in conflict with one another, as if women's issues are so small and unimportant that we can't offer them the grace to be in conflict around those. So I think it's a very hard balance to find between seeing the stereotype next to reality and making a very responsible and conscious decision to start changing things. Whether they are stereotypes, and we challenge the stereotype of women not being able to collaborate with one another, whether it is reality, so how do we change this paradigm that makes us compete against one another? How do we as women challenge all this, both the stereotype and reality as a whole?
I think we have to close unless somebody has 2 seconds of commenting on this. Yeah. Because he's going
Very
to kill us.
quickly, I just completely endorse what Stella said.
We all do.
It's incumbent upon us all to bring other people up behind us. That's a really important thing. I will just quickly mention the fact that there are 21 women ambassadors here in Athens, and we have a group that meets every month. We host women from Greece to talk about issues that are important to them, and we do a lot of things together to help each other. So if I'm trying to work out, oh my God, how do I deal with this issue, or who should I contact to this, I just reach out to that group and someone will help me. So I think that's a really great example of girl power.
Thank you.
Just for a few seconds. Seconds, I know. I think that this is another stereotype, that women not support women. I strongly believe that. Because we are in a very competitive environment for all of us, and the men, the male, they have found another way to have this opposite women, because this is the truth. If we want, we support women. For me personally, I support from many women, and I try to support other women. So just to clarify that we need to be out of the box and to find how we will go on together. I have a lot of things to add, but I know that we have time limited. Maybe you have another panel.
I wish we
and
had more
have
time,
the
and I have
opportunity
like
to work.
1,000 questions for each
Thank
of you.
you so much. I'm sure.
Thank you, everyone.